Yo guys, and welcome. I think the best way to follow up my tier list video is to have a video of a game against a champion that is not in my tier list. Oh, you think that's not a good idea? Well, that's a bit awkward then. But that's what we'll cover today, because I played a pretty interesting matchup that I don't think I've ever played. And while it does make sense to meet the champion on mid lane, on top lane, not so much. That said, I still think it's a very good way to show you how to deal against these type of champions, and also show you how to utilize symbiotic souls to get away from a bad matchup in specific cases like these. Just to give you the background story, I blind picked Aurora as usual, and the enemy team picked Lux, followed up by Yone. I automatically assumed it's Yone top, of course, since why wouldn't it be, right? Wishful thinking, I guess. But sometimes you need to expect the unexpected, and I ended up facing Lux. Sadly though, I had Aerie plus Precision, and if I had to choose my setup against her specifically, I would always go Comet plus Domination for long range E-poke, since that's your only real way to fight back in later stages of the laning phase. Also, if you're curious, speaking in tier list language, I would place her in fully skill dependent for top lane and opponent favorite if we're talking about mid lane. The long lane makes a huge difference, since later on with proper planning on your wave management, you can find solo kills. On mid lane, finding lethal is much more difficult. So, starting off the laning phase, as I've mentioned before in my videos, taking control of the first bush is extremely important, so you don't end up getting cheesed by the enemy laner behind your minions when they meet in the middle of the lane. Not every champion does this of course, but it's a good fundamental thing to do on Aurora. At this point in time, I still don't know if I'm facing Yone or Lux, since role swaps are pretty common. If it's Yone, he might look for a cheeky level 1 extended trade through bushes, so I'm scared to walk deeper than the first one. Generally, if you're sure it's Lux top or someone very weak level 1, for example like Malphite or Vladimir, you should initiate a trade, since Aurora is extremely potent in this aspect, granted you hit your Q of course. I stepped out of the bush and threw my Q in the way to catch her if she tries dodging, then I stepped backwards to dodge her E and I kept my Q pullback so I can extend my passive duration. Afterwards, I keep the pressure on her by going for auto attack trades. If you end up getting one good trade off early, you can end up extending it and winning it even though she used the potion early and I was fighting in her minion wave. I was able to successfully get priority of the lane. Now I have to think about the enemy jungler coming here, so I drop a ward. The enemy jungler is Brand, so I expect him to always go the more efficient route for him, which would be a full clear and then potentially look for something. So I assumed he started blue and patted the top side. That means I have around 1 minute to potentially find lethal. Notice how I'm posturing behind her minions when I saw she used E to last hit. This way, I can zone her off of XP and poke her for free using my level advantage. Now when the wave is crashing under her tower, as long as she just stays back and respects, she doesn't have to die. But I really want to skill check her on this fundamental. With the ward I have and the fact that even if Brand skips camps to gank me, I feel relatively sure that I'm not in danger. As you can see, she isn't quite respecting me and is constantly taking unfavorable trades. Her HP threshold is soon in my lethal range, so right now I'm thinking, when is the exact time to do the ultimate skill check? Which is my Q flash E. Slightly after I hit level 3, I pulled the trigger. Honestly, I wasn't expecting a kill, I was expecting her to flash it, but I wouldn't have gotten a different time window to strike since she was about to hit level 3 on the next 2 melee minions, so with her W up and HP from the level up, there was just no other way. Even if she reacted to it though, I would have been happy with the flash for flash trade and then would have forced her to go back and TP on a bad wave state. Buying early boots against Lux is pretty important since she's also skillshot reliant champion. One thing I want to point out here is last season and before, you could get away with not teleporting with this wave state, but due to minions being way more squishy early game this season, you're forced to do it since you lose too many minions while you're gone. And now I walk up using the fact that I'm stronger, looking to trim down the wave and potential E-poke. But now after a few levels is when the matchup becomes pretty non-interactable because she severely outranges you, so you have to be extra careful when you step up. My advice is to always think how and when she'll throw her E. Look to dodge it according to what you think she'll do. Will she go for a long range one with the intention of poke or a closer one expecting you to look for a trade? If you're gonna get hit 100%, if you can use this time to trade HP onto her, great, since most of the time you benefit from eco trades, since after level 6 you can out-win her pretty easily, especially on top lane. Skipping to when I end up buying Symbiotic Souls, the reason you buy them is because 1. Faster recall time, but 2. They're extremely cheap, giving you early access to tier 2 boots, even if they give slightly less movement speed than actual tier 2 boots early on. These boots provide immense tempo and a way to get out of bad lanes, so let's see it in action. Enemy Lux ends up shoving the wave into me and I don't have a lot of counterplay. Now the question is, did she recall or not? If she did, my appropriate response is to find a recall of my own as soon as possible. If not, I need to stay since I'll lose a lot of minions even with Symbiotic Souls. She gives away her position by throwing her E. This gives me the perfect time to abuse my buy. I can shove the wave and instantly look for a recall. After killing these minions, I'm 2 waves ahead of the Lux in terms of tempo. I want you to remember that, it will be important in a little bit. My buy wasn't anything exceptional, but it's better than just keeping the gold in my inventory of course. Grubbies are up, and now with this reset I'm feeling pretty good because I also have my ult up, and this is where Aurora outvalues the enemy top laner. Team fighting. Sadly though, I noticed that KO is getting ganked by the enemy support pantheon. Always try to pan your camera to anything important happening on the map. I didn't do it here since I noticed my KO got her HP chunked down to a very low threshold, and given that the enemy support is already around Grubs, I assumed there was no play to be made. Now, notice Lux's mana. Remember earlier what I said about our tempo difference? Well, this indirectly is the result of it. I bought an item that gives me literal tempo and almost no fighting stats, but knowing how to use it, I was able to be here on time, but with a huge mana and item advantage. If there were a fight on Grubs, I would probably have twice the impact that she would. And while I do agree she could have played a better wave management game, it doesn't change the fact that Symbiotic Souls allowed the situation to exist and were potentially a game-winning purchase, or at least a team-fighting winning one. Afterwards, I noticed that she finally chose to recall, so I take a plate. I don't need to go back right now, especially since my TP will be up soon, so if something horrible happens, I can always just go back and teleport. Taking a recall right now is not a good idea, even though it's a cannon wave, since Lux should be back any moment and she can demolish the wave easily with 2 abilities. I position in a way that tells her she won't be able to see us unless she goes through me. And even if the trade doesn't end up in my favor, as long as I don't die, I just go back and recall while she's missing last hits during the trade. And while I could have done a better job at dodging, eventually she got me with a pretty big one and I end up getting forced out of lane. But I was completely prepared for the worst case scenario. I traded a little bit more since she was still on cooldown. Then I end up going in the bush and once again use my 4-second recall, timing it with my teleport. I get back into lane and now I'm not sure where she went. I assume she went back to get an item herself. She could also be in any bush right now looking to get a nasty trade on me, so I need to be somewhat wary of that as well. My intuition was right and she went back and instantly greets me with an E ability. But as you can see, even though I use W, it's extremely hard to dodge it if you don't know it's coming. Fair game to her of course. I go and hover the river in case something happens in mid lane because I know Lux will scout the 3rd bush with her E, so it's pointless to stay in lane. Back in lane, I start fishing for something with my movement. She throws E and I predict it going forward with my W, but her Q connects on me and I still lose the trade. I commit with my ult because I don't want her to be healthy. I want to at least force a recall out of her, so she's scared to stay in lane with low HP. And I don't generally need my ult unless I'm looking for an all-in, and of course if I'm low HP, I won't be doing that. I was ready at all times to react to a Q flash from her with my own, since she could have looked for something. Little did I know that the flash would come out of their support and not the Lux, but nonetheless this ends up being pretty worth for our team. The last part I want to show you is when my ult comes back. Ideally in this matchup, you'd always keep the wave at your side, and whenever she steps up, you'd all-in her straight up with your ult, since you'd put her at lethal range at the very least, just like I did here. Maybe I could have played it better. I feel like if I just ulted when I saw her miss her abilities, maybe there was a kill angle, but I was hoping I land at least one ability before I fully commit so I can at least get her flash. She ended up staying and this gave me another opportunity to use my empowered recall. The lady phase was somewhat over at this point, since enemies started accelerating the game by moving around the map. Eventually we ended up winning the game with me having good impact, but this game wasn't really about me. My team did a very good job. My duty here was to not be behind in laning phase, but with proper planning and itemization, I was able to turn this matchup into a winning one. I found the solo kill, was constantly managing waves better since I had priority over the minion wave most of the time, and was almost always ready to be there if my team needed me for a fight. While being in a somewhat rough matchup, even if it's on top lane, I could have for sure done a better job, especially when it comes to ability dodging and letting her step up. But the lack of experience held me back a bit. Given the context of this game though, I think it ended up being alright and is a good source material to learn from. And in the end, I got a compliment from the opponent Lux. Yeah, something like a compliment at least. Thank you for watching the video. Hopefully I did a good job at conveying my thoughts and how to tackle unfavorable matchups like this one. Of course, you probably won't meet Lux top anytime soon, but now you know. And all of the advice besides the champion piloting part, which is unique for any champion you end up facing of course, is applicable to other ones like Victor, Karma, and Quinn. I wish you all a good remaining of your day or night, and I'll see you in the next one.